Hello everyone and welcome to my review of the Gamblers Campaign for the F-16 in DCS World, campaign that I've just recently finished doing a playthrough of on my channel, and so while it's still fresh I want to put down my thoughts. So on the face of it, this campaign is very much like it first in Weasels over Syria. You are an F-16 pilot, you are doing seed operations over Syria. Where things are very, very different, though, is in this campaign it is all based on the real-life conflict against ISIS. And very notably, the campaign is being co-developed by John Walters, who is a F-16 pilot who did fly over Syria during these, and a lot of the missions are directly based on missions he took part in. Others are based in missions that he knows about or people that he knows took part in. So the main theme of this campaign is a real high level of authenticity there. And to be honest, the authenticity is what is going to make or break the campaign for you. Because it is so focused on real-world tactics and real-world events, and the real-world conflict that it is featuring is such a asymmetric conflict, it is very different from a lot of other campaigns out there. You are not going up against a similar foe, you're going up against ISIS. They do have some SAM systems, they do have quite a lot of anti-air, they have a hell of a lot of man-pads, but for the most part, you are not in direct threat most of the time. Very often with the missions, the hard deck is well above where the enemy can engage, so you are perfectly safe. That is not to say that this campaign is easy, though. The campaign is definitely challenging. The challenge comes in trying to get your weapons on target, normally in a rather tight time frame. And honestly, the biggest challenge of this is trying to spot your targets. Sometimes you are given coordinates to the targets, very often you are talked onto the targets, and so depending on how good you are at being talked on visually to a target, and especially how good you are at estimating range, is something that is going to determine how easy or difficult you find this campaign. In terms of what kind of ordnance you are dropping, it isn't a huge amount of variety. The variety mostly comes in the missions themselves. In terms of the ordnance, you're mostly dropping laser-guided bombs and Mavericks, with a few missions where you're dropping GPS-guided bombs on pre-planned targets. But the missions themselves are really quite varied. Initially, you're going up against a little bit more heavily defended sites as the ISIS troops kind of have a lot to begin with. Very quickly they run out and you're mostly hunting down man-pads and things like that, very often working with other flights in close coordination to help support them and their actions on the ground. And more than a few times you are talking to a JTAC on the ground, sometimes a JTAC in active combat, and trying to help them out, trying to put bombs on target as soon as you can. Nice thing about this campaign is it does feature quite a flexible difficulty system in that it's pretty easy to complete the mission as far as the mission is concerned, but it's quite hard to get 100% on every single mission. You've got all sorts of little sub-objectives, it gives you multiple choices throughout it, and sometimes making the wrong choice is going to cost you there. There is a big focus on making sure every single ordnance counts. If you waste one by, say, missing a target or messing up and not arming your bombs like I may have done one time, then yeah, you are going to get in trouble for it. You're going to pay for having to waste ordnance. There'll be targets later on that you won't be able to engage. In terms of variety, there is actually quite a lot there, considering that on the face of it, they are all you going up as either seed or CAS missions against a rather inferior foe. But there's quite a lot of differences there. Sometimes you'll be clearing out a site ahead of an allied flight coming in to mop it up. Sometimes you'll be giving close air support to troops in contact on the ground. A couple of times you're given more sort of open kill box type missions, and honestly no two missions are quite the same. Flight times can be a bit long in the first part of the campaign. The first half you're taking off from Jordan, very often with sort of 30-minute plus flight times in and out. You can absolutely fast forward through those, and the campaign is very good at unfast forwarding for you whenever a voice line is coming up, so you can quite happily leave it on fast forward and not miss anything, which is something that I really like there. The second half, it is a lot quicker. You've got a much shorter flight over. In no mission are you required to do air-to-air refueling. It is very often an option for it, but I went through the whole campaign without doing any air-to-air refueling. There's one mission in the campaign where it would be mandatory, but the particular mission starts with you having just done air-to-air refueling off the tanker, because basically you're waiting around for several hours before then. One little note here is, for reasons of it being up against ISIS, there's no air-to-air combat in the game. You do occasionally brush against Russian fighters because they were also involved in the conflict. There will certainly be times that you will have to at least radar lock hostiles that are coming in to kind of chase them away, but there is no air-to-air combat, so if you are wanting a campaign with air-to-air combat, this is definitely not the one. In terms of theming and story, it being based on a real-world event, the story is mostly coming from what really happened there on the ground. There isn't exactly a big overarching tale because that's not the way that real battles, real wars work. Instead, there is certainly a lot of story and theming in each individual mission, and this is really aided by the absolutely top-notch voice acting that they've got here. There are a bunch of voice actors here, huge number of voiced lines, and honestly not a single one took me out of the experience. Everyone was delivered very, very well, very believably, very in keeping. The only caveat I'd say with the voice system is there is a volume difference that is very notable. Some are really quiet and really difficult to hear above the engine sound, even with the radio turned right up. Others come through really nice and loud and clear, but that's one tiny little complaint I have. Sometimes you're very much reading the subtitles at the top of the screen because just can't make out what they are saying. Our voice lines are very often talking over each other, but that is by design. They talk over each other in realistic ways because you are linked with all sorts of other groups out there. And in terms of theming, I've got to say the campaign does a really good job at making you feel like you're a small part of a much larger operation with all of these other flights. I can't think of a single mission beyond the first one where there isn't some other flight out there that is doing something in the area, and you hear them getting their objectives, being called on to targets, you hear them asking for tracks to tankers and so on, you hear various updates and things on things that don't concern you at all. It really does a good job at making you feel like you are part of a large allied operation. And then some of the missions, you are really working closely alongside them. Best missions for me were the ones where you were being called into troops on contact with other flights also in the area, and so you're being tasked with different targets all together, all in the same area. So it's important that you listen to your targets and only engage what you are meant to, because there's already weapons coming in on the others. And I'll also say there is absolutely no boring missions throughout the campaign. I enjoyed every single one of them. There is only one non-combat mission, that is the opening mission, but even that is not a boring mission. There is certainly challenge in that first mission with some unique failures that you have to deal with in a way that you probably haven't done before. So to wrap up then, would I recommend this campaign? Yes, but with a big asterisk there. And that asterisk purely comes down to the realism and authenticity of this campaign. If you are someone who really, really likes fully authentic campaigns dealing with real-world scenarios, then this is excellent. This is up there with the same kind of level that you can get with a lot of the World War II campaigns that are based on real-world sorties and feature heavily trying to replay those. If you want that, but in a modern setting, then yeah, absolutely. if you're wanting more something along the lines of just a really fun modern experience with doing seed type operations, then I would lean on the side of first in weasels over Syria. That gives you a lot more seed-based targets that you're doing. You're engaging a lot of SAM sites there. You've got a lot of different targets using a lot of different tactics. And both are really excellent campaigns. If you've got the time and the money, yeah, play both. Really good investment to get the most out of your F-16. If you're wanting more of a kind of seed anti-SAM experience, first in weasels over Syria has you. If you want more authenticity, and you want maybe more challenge with finding your targets rather than in executing the targets, then yes, certainly Gamblers is a good way to go. One final little note when it comes to realism and authenticity there is the campaign can be quite dark at times, especially when it is relating to real-world events. Especially there is one mission where the entire mission is basically recreating an event where a real-world Allied pilot was shot down and ultimately killed, and so that was quite a depressing one to play through. Equally, there are plenty of others where you've got troops in contact on the ground that you can't really help because of ROE. It can be quite distressing, can be quite upsetting, and just in general, if you are not comfortable with fighting a real-world conflict here that has happened very recently within living memory, then yeah, do bear in mind this does feature very much recent events, things that are still having effects today, and so yeah, just take that with take that into account when you're trying to make your decision here. But for me, I really enjoyed this campaign. It certainly made me depressed at points, but I enjoyed every single mission that I went up in. None of them were frustrating. All of them brought something a little bit new to the table, even with the same weapon sets. Everything was just a little bit different, a little bit interesting in its own unique way. And the levels of love and attention to detail are exactly what you'd expect from other Baltic Dragon campaigns. Absolutely top-notch, really enjoyable. I've enjoyed it a huge amount, and no doubt I'll be reviewing more of Baltic Dragon's work in the future, so I look forward to that. But until then, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers!